镜头光晕、气象气球、视错觉、沼气。这些现象可以解释并快速推翻95%的不明飞行物目击事件，但另外5%的事件拥有充足的目击者和证据，需要被认真对待。莱斯利·基恩研究这些事件已有10几年，重点调查最可靠的证据和目击者。
I've worked with high-level officials, pilots, generals, and a former U.S. governor to show that there is a physical phenomenon that exists.
A huge triangular object,
dark gray oval.
Like a frisbee? Like a UFO type thing.
如今，录音、雷达记录以及首次披露的目击证词等新证据，让人们重新开始重视这5%的事件。
It's time to correct the record once and for all.
My name is Richard Haynes, and I have been a research scientist for NASA since 1967. My interest in unidentified aerial phenomena goes back 30 years at least. When I was a skeptic, I was just quite convinced that I could explain the phenomenon. But I had an opportunity to talk with commercial pilots who would come in to fly our simulators. And once in a while, a pilot would tell me this remarkable story that it had happened to him. And over the years, I began to realize that I was wrong, that I could not explain phenomena. So in the 1970s, I began collecting face-to-face pilot interviews, sometimes in the cockpit of the airplane. Sometimes we would refly an actual encounter. And so far, I have collected over 3,000 sightings from virtually every country of the world, and quite a number of them were very serious. These would qualify as near miss by FAA standards. And so, looking at air safety as our concern, we formed NARCAP, the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena. NARCAP is a reporting center for pilots and air traffic controllers who would like to make a report of their sightings in a completely confidential manner. This is very important because a lot of pilots are afraid for their careers. They believe that they will be ridiculed, and the implication is that if you see something in flight, you're not competent to fly the airplane, which is absurd. We've got to turn that situation around.
Yeah, this 1-2 again. On some other equipment here, we have confirmed there is a flight size of 2 around your 1550 squawk.
1986年，美国国家航空异常现象举报中心得知，在美国阿拉斯加州安克雷奇附近发生了一起不明飞行物目击事件，并且成为了有记录以来最有名的飞行员目击事件之一。美国联邦航空局的一位负责人约翰·卡拉汉是该事件的一名重要调查员。
I was the division manager for the Accidents, Investigations, and Evaluation Division, FAA headquarters. The rule was if anything came up that was newsworthy or was an accident, we had to know before the smoke cleared. Sometime in January of '87, I received a call from the Alaskan region. Apparently a UFO had chased this Japanese 747 across the skies for like 31 minutes. Somehow the media found out about it, and now they want more information. They didn't know what to tell them. I said, tell them it's under investigation. I told them to package up all the data, the voice tapes, the computer tapes, the military tapes, and send them overnight delivery on the red-eye flight to the FAA Tech Center, Atlantic City.
卡拉汉召集了一批美国联邦航空局的分析员，将雷达数据和飞行员的通信数据进行同步。之后，由卡拉汉记录在了这段视频中，这成为解释这一现象的关键线索。
Captain Kenju Teruchi, a senior captain for Japan Airlines, flying a 747 cargo flight from Paris to Tokyo. I saw a military test of some advanced nature.
When he looked at his airborne radar, he saw a large target 7, 8, 9, 10 miles in front of him. And the first thing he did is he called the FAA and wanted to know if they had any traffic up there for him.
Japan 1628 Heavy, sir. If you're able to identify the type of aircraft, and see if you can tell whether it's military or civilian.
Japan 1628, we cannot identify the type, but we can see navigation light and thermal light.
通过检查这份特别的雷达证据，卡拉汉的团队能够确认，当时在贤寿寺内驾驶的飞机附近确实有不明飞行物。但是，海恩斯和这位日本飞行员未公开的采访，才真正揭示了这个不明飞行物的细节。
What he told me was remarkable. It was a huge object, something far bigger than his own airplane.
Big walnut shape, as large as 3 or 4 aircraft carriers, had lights coming from it, and small craft coming and going from the bigger craft.
How long did it take to move from the 12 o'clock position?
ものすごい早いですね。そこを私ずっと見てましたので、追求はできませんでした。
Captain Tarucci made no excuse for being afraid. He said he was fearful. The captain and his first officer were expecting a collision and were bracing themselves. That's how serious this was.
安克雷奇的管制员显然对此事件给予了高度重视，因为他采取的下一步行动便是和附近的埃尔门多夫空军基地确认这一不明目标的情况。
Okay, it looks like I am getting some search primary return. I don't know if it's erroneous or whatever, but
It's not erroneous. I want you to keep a good track on there, and if you can pick up a code, verify that you do not have any aircraft operating in that area. No.
that is firm. We do not have anybody up there right now.
The military guy sees those targets. The controller working the radar sees these targets. According to the pilot, there's a great big ship out here, and that stays with them for a while.
Japan 1628 Heavy, sir, I'm going to request you to make a right 360-degree turn and advise me what your traffic does then.
Right 360.
As Captain Tarucci was approaching Fairbanks, he received permission to carry out a 360-degree turn. He wanted to try to get away from that object that was on his left-hand side. His supposition was that the object would continue in a straight flight, and he would bank to the right and leave it behind.
旋回方向しか私たち見えませんのでね、ないからどっか行ったなと思って、消えた本でもう終わりだから、ああよかったと思って何もなくてよかったなと思ったんです。で、アンカレッジの方に潮を向けました。見えるわけです。360度旋回してもついてきたわけです。Yeah, that's 1-2 again. On some other equipment over here, we have confirmed there is a flight size of 2 around your 1550 squawk. Where is he following him? It looks like he is, yes.
As Tarucci continued the 360-degree turn, the object traveled around the circle with him, which is very interesting because it has to be going faster than that airplane to keep up. So the phenomenon had to be under good control, perhaps intelligent control, to maintain precise station with that airplane.
机长看到了他，副驾驶看到了他，军方和安克雷奇的管制员也在雷达上发现了他的踪迹。还有一架经过此处的美国联合航空公司的客机也报告称，在那个区域发现过不明飞行物。这和最可信的不明飞行物事件，包括蓝道深森林事件、菲尼克斯之光和芝加哥不明飞行物事件，有着很多相同特征。巨大的碟状物体移动受某种智能支配，能够瞬间加速到未知的速度。最不同寻常的是，这次目击事件持续了55分钟之久，跨越了560公里长的范围，这给美国联邦航空局提供了大量的数据信息。
They had the analysts put together a chart that would explain every hit around the 747. And even a blind man could see there was a target there. But I'm thinking it's the stealth bomber. Figuring who believes in UFOs.
卡拉汉回到华盛顿后，同白宫的科研团队会面，以审查这些资料。
There was 3 scientists from Reagan's staff. There was 3 guys that said they were with the CIA. And I played the tape 3 times for them. When the video got done, they were all excited about it. They're drooling. They can't wait to get their hands on all this data. This is the first time they ever had more than a few minutes of radar data to go through. And then the CIA guy, he steps forward and he says, this event, pointing to the TV monitor, never happened. We were never here. We're confiscating all this data, and you're all sworn to secrecy. So I said, what do you think it is? I'm still thinking it's the stealth bomber. He says, well, it's a UFO.
2个月后，美国联邦航空局公布了此次目击事件的官方解释。和菲尼克斯之光与芝加哥不明飞行物事件一样，他们企图对这一现象进行掩饰。
They said it was a split beacon. It was a ghost target. It was ring around. It never happened. But the Japanese pilots do not see ghost targets. They don't see ring around. They don't see split beacons. We only see a dot or a slash on radar. You have to rely on the pilot telling you what's there.
贤寿寺内机长决心冒着损害个人名誉的极大风险，公开自己的遭遇。
Because of his willingness to fill out the forms and be interviewed in great depth, Japan Airlines decided that he should no longer fly. And so Captain Taruchi was asked to fly a desk, as they say.
This case illustrates what's at stake. Until the U.S. government changes its policy on UFO sightings, witnesses are always going to be afraid to come forward with critical and important evidence.
This is how science progresses, is to allow people to openly and honestly describe what they're seeing. We're never going to get to the bottom of this phenomenon until we have an open disclosure.
These days, if you go on to sites like YouTube, you'll see all sorts of videos of UFOs, and there's a huge amount of fake videos, photos which have been mocked up with various computer programs. I mean, it's almost impossible these days to pick out the signal from amidst the noise.
And the only pictures that are really important are the ones that have been so thoroughly analyzed and vetted that we know that they are a genuine unidentified flying object.
这是互联网上观看人次最多的不明飞行物视频，播放次数超过1700万。据称，于2007年拍摄于海地。它和最近上传至互联网上的其他视频一起，让人们议论纷纷。但是，随着特效软件功能的不断强大，辨别真假视频的难度也水涨船高。 这就使视觉特效领域专家的意见变得极具参考价值。
I'm Doug Trumbull. I make movies that have to do with science fiction, special effects. I worked on 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and so I do motherships and spaceships and UFOs for a living. We have a situation right now where everybody who has a laptop can make a fake UFO. I can make a fake UFO on my cell phone. I mean, it's just all over the place. My personal belief is that I'm convinced that there is something very real. But I've never seen a photograph that I couldn't duplicate or fake digitally or optically or photographically and make it look just like that. And so I'm my own worst enemy in that respect because I know what's possible.
特朗布尔在工作休息期间分享了他对2007年海地不明飞行物视频的看法。
I think it's really good. I don't buy it as a real UFO or UFOs, but I think it's a pretty well done special effect because they're doing very dynamic camera moves. They're matching the irregular movement of the camera to the movement of the object. They seem to have kind of aircraft-like ballistic trajectories, and it all kind of makes sense, like they're flying in formation. But there are a number of things happening here that kind of give away the illusion to a certain extent. Let me just freeze on this. You know, look at these two palm trees. They're identical. That frond, this frond, that frond, that frond. These are actually a photo composite of one palm tree put in two places. So it's really the same palm tree twice. That doesn't happen in nature. It's absolutely impossible. There's other things that happen, like when this thing goes through the trees, even though this seems to be an extremely bright light, it's not affecting these fronds at all. There should be more light happening up in the fronds of the tree, so you get a little twinkly light and some interaction, but there isn't any, because that's a much harder thing to do. So, good job, but I don't buy it.
将来带着相机的度假者们，可能碰巧会拍到一些无法反驳的不明飞行物证据。其实，已经有这样的图像得到了科学检验，并被广泛承认了。
Des personnes affirment avoir vu longuement et à plusieurs reprises.
上世纪80年代末到90年代初，发生在比利时的目击事件是史上目击范围最广的不明飞行物事件，有超过2000多份来自飞行员、警察和军方的证据详实的报告。
I thought this is an intrusion of our airspace. We have to find out because it's an air defense issue.
持续了18个月的不明飞行物目击事件令比利时政府惊慌失措，并给科学界带来了迄今最具说服力的不明飞行物证据。
I look at it and said, "Oh my God, that's too much." My feeling at the time, I must admit, it was a fake.
这就是比利时不明飞行物事件。
My name is Patrick Ferrin, and I was one of the two co-founders of SOBEPS, which is a non-profit association devoted to the study of aerial space phenomenon. In 1989, the situation was very quiet here in Belgium concerning UFOs. So quiet that we decided to close the association because there was no sighting anymore. And all of a sudden, strange things started to happen in the area of Eupen. And this was, historically speaking, the beginning of the Belgian UFO wave.
Je m'appelle Albert Kreutz. À l'époque du 29 novembre 1989, dans la soirée, je me trouvais en qualité de dispatcher au district de gendarmerie d'Eupen.
大约下午5点30分左右，有警察报告克罗伊茨称发现一个不明飞行物飞过附近的空地，看起来像灯火通明的足球运动场一样。
J'ai blagué avec eux puisque c'était fin novembre. Je dis ça c'est Saint-Nicolas qui va descendre. Oui, il me crie. Regardez un peu par la fenêtre à l'étage, vous allez le voir. Je vais vers la fenêtre et je vois déjà passer l'objet 200 ou 300 mètres devant moi comme un bateau flottant au ciel. C'était magnifique à voir. Fait quand même croire que nous ne sommes pas les seuls sur Terre et dans l'univers. Je l'ai trouvé beau.
克罗伊茨立刻被报告此现象的市民来电淹没。于是他命令在附近驻守的警察跟踪那个物体。其中一位是凯米斯警局总督察迪特尔·普卢门斯。接到呼叫时，他和同事正在比利时与荷兰边境执勤。
Und haben zu gleicher Zeit dann die Funksprüche gehört, dann hier in der Richtung gefahren und haben dann ein Licht gesehen oder auf jeden Fall irgendeinen Ort gesehen, über Horry Chapelle steht. Und wir haben uns gefragt, was ist das?
Je leur propose de poursuivre l'objet et d'observer. Et ainsi, ils sont montés à Horry Chapelle, où l'engin est resté immobile au-dessus de l'hospice Belleuil.
Ich denke, dass das hier so ziemlich genau die Stelle war, wo wir damals auch gehalten haben. Ein riesiges Objekt über uns gesehen, wo Lichter, runde Lichter auf den Ecken waren, auf 3 Ecken. Und irgendwann ein anderes kleines Objekt herausgeflogen, weil ein rötliches Blinklicht und blinkte in dem Rhythmus wie oben dieses Stück.
普鲁门斯和同事观察了几分钟，突然，红色的球状物撤回到了那个较大的飞行物中。
Das Objekt an Höhe gewonnen und weitergeflogen.
克罗伊茨和普鲁门斯的描述只是当晚众多报告中的一例。一共有13名警察从奥伊棚附近的8处不同位置报告有不明三角形飞行物出现。此外，当晚还有60多次市民的报告，形成了一起大规模的集体目击事件，很快便引起全球媒体的注意，迫使比利时政府做出回应。
It was really an historic night because the sighting reports were all so similar. But the big surprise was that this was only the beginning.
Des personnes affirment avoir vu longuement et à plusieurs reprises des objets volants et lumineux de forme triangulaire.
Ils ont vu dans le ciel un phénomène étrange, un ovni.
The day after November 29, it was a huge covering in the media.
Résultat des interactions entre les forces cosmiques.
It was on TV, it was in the newspaper, everywhere. And immediately we took our car and we went to Eupen to interview the people who saw it.
Mon mari a vu quelque chose de tout à fait incroyable la nuit de lundi. Et il a vu un objet énorme avec d'immenses rayons lumineux qui l'a suivi pendant plusieurs minutes alors qu'il rentrait à la maison. Voilà, il n'ose pas en parler parce qu'il a peur qu'on se moque de lui, mais moi, je tiens quand même à vous en informer.
We collected 150 different sightings from the same area, describing almost the same thing.
Donc ça forme un triangle.
Un triangle? Un triangle.
Oui.
A huge, triangular, dark object.
Avec chaque extrémité, un grand feu blanc.
C'est vraiment comme des phares d'atterrissage d'un avion, mais beaucoup plus fort. Parce que ça vient de secondes. Et au milieu de celui-ci, un gros clignotant rouge.
What is very interesting is that triangular object wasn't reported at the time in 1989. At the time, in ufology, people were speaking about flying saucers, discs, something like that. But not the triangular, dark-shaped object. This was new.
1989年11月29日，比利时的不明飞行物事件引来了全世界的关注，促使政府做出快速回应。一位重要人物受命负责对此展开调查，这就是比利时空军参谋部的维尔弗里德·德布劳沃少将。
In 1989, I was in charge of protection of the airspace of the country when a total of 143 sightings were reported in the area of Eupen. When receiving such report at military level, a lot of officers will reject it because it's not in their terms of reference. It's frustrating. It's frustrating having to declare that you don't know what is going on. So when it came to my office, I wanted to react in the same way, but I thought this is an intrusion of our airspace. We are the country hosting NATO. We have to find out because it's an air defense issue.
德布劳沃的第一反应是联系美国大使馆，询问他们是否知道有隐形飞机在执行任务，而没有事先发出警告。
Now they came back very quickly and confirmed formally that no such flights had taken place over Belgium. So that wiped out that theory.
目击事件仍在继续升温。其中有很多起事件有不止一个目击者，包括警察、军人、政府官员，还有一位空军的天气预报员。
Highly credible witnesses, all of them convinced that they saw something exceptional.
所有目击报告中，最让德布劳沃感兴趣的一起，发生在首波目击事件2星期后。若干目击者报告称，三角形物体在埃尔内镇附近出没。其中，土木工程师兼比利时陆军基建部主管安德烈·阿蒙德上校的说法令德布劳沃大为震惊。
Je quittais la maison pour aller chercher mon fils à la gare ferroviaire de Jean-Blou. C'est 3 panneaux jaunes qui avaient un mouvement parallèle à ma trajectoire sur la route. En dessous, j'avais un feu rouge. Je ne comprenais pas du tout ce que c'était. Mon épouse me disait dans la voiture, André, c'est certainement un avion. Et moi, comme je voulais aussi l'observer, je ralentissais ma vitesse. Et c'était ainsi de suite. Pendant 2 ou 3 fois, j'ai ralenti, j'ai accéléré. Et chaque fois, l'OVNI revenait à ma hauteur. Cet objet est passé derrière le bois de Sarernage. Moi, j'ai tourné également vers la gauche pour descendre devant la ferme, comme on verra tantôt. En remontant la petite, l'OVNI sortait de derrière le bois, là-bas. À un moment donné, j'ai vu le gros phare blanc s'approcher de nous, que j'évalue à environ 100 mètres. À ce moment-là, on entendait le bruit du trafic sur la Nationale 4 un peu plus loin. On entendrait le train qui passait sur la voie ferrée un peu plus loin. Par contre, le bruit de l'objet qui s'est approché de nous pendant les 6 ou 8 minutes qu'a duré mon observation, mon épouse me dit « André, viens, rentre dans la voiture, moi je n'aime pas ça ». À ce moment-là, le grand phare blanc, direction sud-ouest, très grande accélération. L'énergie qui est déployée pour pouvoir aller cueillir les ondes d'énergie et pour leur donner des accélérations comme ils ont fait, etc. Il faut pouvoir maîtriser cette technologie-là. Et actuellement, 20 ans après, je constate une chose, c'est qu'il n'y a pas d'engin qui puisse aujourd'hui faire ce que cet engin a fait aujourd'hui. Or, elle ne l'est pas. C'est pas possible.
阿蒙德上校向国防部递交了一份报告，他是相信比利时政府有必要采取行动的众多军方官员之一。
We decided to set up a procedure to launch in the future aircraft to try to identify these sightings, but on conditions. First of all, witnesses would report to the police. They would confirm the sighting, and then they would call a radar station which had the authority to scramble F-16s.
Je suis Yves Melberx. À l'époque, donc en 1990, j'étais F-16, et donc la 350e escadrille de chasse en Belgique. Nous avions donc entendu parler donc de la vague d'OVNI, en particulier dans la région de Liège et de Penn.
1990年3月30日晚，米尔伯格斯所在的中队得知，在勒芬镇周围发生了一连串不明飞行物目击事件。
Comme prévu, nous avons décollé en formation, le F-16 en direction de l'est de Bruxelles. Le but pour nous, c'était d'intercepter cet objet, ou en tout cas de s'en approcher et d'essayer d'identifier l'objet dans la mesure de nos moyens.
Maintenant, voyageons en direction sud, à une vitesse extraordinaire.
La vitesse à laquelle l'écho se déplaçait, grosse variation d'altitude, les grandes variations de cap, tout à fait particuliers, uniques. En fait, on a l'habitude en combat aérien de voir des objets ou des avions évoluer rapidement, mais ici, en l'occurrence, les variations étaient encore beaucoup plus importantes, ce qui laissait supposer que nous avions affaire, je veux dire, à un objet très particulier ou en tout cas différent d'un avion qu'on observe d'habitude.
Ici, on va attendre dans les passés. Voilà, ici, vous voyez le vecteur de l'objectif 300 degrés, vitesse 999. Vitesse normale? Bon, la vitesse d'un avion normal à cette altitude est l'ordre de 350-400 nœuds.
迫于媒体和公众急切知道真相的压力，德布劳沃召开了新闻发布会，解释米尔伯格斯的飞机所记录的数据。
The F-16s registered objects that were flying at a normal speed, but suddenly turning and accelerating to speeds which were much higher than the speed of sound. Now, this cannot be done by any conventional aircraft.
Donc, les accélérations ont passé de 150 à 500 nœuds dans une fraction de seconde.
Unfortunately, only one of the F-16 radar tapes provided sufficient information to analyze, which meant that we couldn't compare the tapes to exclude electromagnetic interference, which is a reflection of an object, sometimes on the ground, that can go through the atmosphere and bounce back to the F-16 radar.
100% sûr que vraiment il y avait quelque chose. Ça c'est clair.
鉴于飞机雷达记录的缺失，政府官员无法证实飞行员的说法，但米尔伯格斯仍然深信不疑。
Personnellement, je pense qu'il y avait effectivement un objet à cet endroit-là ce jour. À partir du moment où des témoins visuels des stations au sol et des avions, on a 3 sources différentes qui observent en fait un objet au même moment, à la même partie. Sur base de ce que nous avons observé, on peut dire qu'il y avait effectivement quelque chose.
比利时不明飞行物事件中的个人目击事件十分与众不同，其极高的可信度给德布劳沃和其他调查人员留下了深刻的印象。
But what they didn't have was something irrefutable, a piece of evidence that would bring this fully into the realm of science.
一个春天的夜晚，在距离事件出发地不远的一个村子里，这份姗姗来迟的证据终于出现了，结果超乎所有人的想象。
My feeling at the time, I must admit, it was a fake.
在比利时不明飞行物事件开始1年多后，不明飞行物的目击报告不断涌入帕特里克·费林的办公室。
For almost 18 months, we collected massive observations, and we met several hundred people. We collected something like 60 photographs of unidentified flying things, and almost the same amount of video film. But unfortunately, they're all very bad. All you can see is small dots of lights on a dark background. But we were lucky to find one good picture. And this picture was taken in the small village of Petit Rechin, which is not that far from Eupen.
The 4th of April 1990. At 10 o'clock in the evening, a girl was walking her dog in the garden and she saw a very strange object. She came back in and told her boyfriend, "We have something strange here, can you come and have a look?" And he went out and he took his camera. He only had 2 pictures left, so he leaned against the wall, didn't move at all, and set an exposure time of about 1 to 2 seconds.
He took 2 pictures, and when he got his film developed, he saw that one of the 2 pictures was blank. There was nothing on it, so he threw it away. But the second one was interesting. He saw 3 lights and something reddish right in the middle, but that was all. I received the original at the time. I looked at it and said, "Oh my God, that's too much." My feeling at the time, I must admit, it was a fake. So I built a small model and I tried to reproduce what was on the slides. And I immediately understood that it was not a model. So we decided to see someone who was an expert in digital analysis, someone who had the right tools to detect and to prove it was a fake or not.
布鲁塞尔皇家军事学院核物理学家马克·阿什罗伊教授对这张照片进行了为期1年的深入研究。
Professor Asher's analysis of the blue component of the slide showed that one side of the triangular object is perfectly in focus, but 2 other sides are blurred. This proves that there is an independent movement of the object. It was not a fake.
世界上还有若干科学家对这张照片做了进一步分析，其中还包括法国巴黎大学的核物理学家安德烈·马里昂教授。
Professor Marion discovered that there was a magnetic field around that object because he observed a pattern like iron filings behave in a magnetic field.
马里昂教授的发现引发了一种猜测，即该物体可能是利用了磁等离子体动力推进的原理，也就是利用磁场来产生推力的电动引擎。这样的推进系统还能解释为什么目击者们都报告该物体经过时没有风和声音。
In the history of UFO study, the Petit Machin photograph stands out as one of the most convincing pieces of evidence of a sighting to date. Not only does it reinforce thousands of reports from across Belgium, but it reveals many shared attributes of the most credible UFO cases.
三角形飞行物移动时悄无声息，能够瞬间加速到未知的速度。
And what's interesting about the Belgian sightings is that we in the UK had a very similar wave of sightings 3 years afterwards. Many of the witnesses talk about a large triangular-shaped UFO with 3 lights on the underside of the craft and a larger, slightly dimmer light in the center. So it's clear that in both cases, governments are looking at this and are coming to the conclusion that we are dealing with a real phenomenon.
比利时不明飞行物事件的意义不仅在于高达2000多次的目击报告，还在于其每次报告都被官方给予了高度重视。
It lasted for almost 18 months, and all of a sudden, everything stopped.
Of the 2,000 reported cases, 650 were investigated, and out of the 650, 500 remain unexplained. The question remains open, what is it? And I don't know the answer, that's for sure. I can only say what it was not. It was no aircraft, no helicopter, no blimp, no Zeppelin, no ULM, no RPV, you just name it.
比利时不明飞行物事件至今仍是个谜，即使是20年后的今天，目击者们的疑惑仍然远远多于答案。
Je suis un peu frustré parce qu'après 20 ans, il n'y a personne qui m'a encore donné une explication valable.
Effectivement, il y avait 2 objets en même temps, qu'on n'a pas trouvé d'autres explications.
Ich habe so ein Flugobjekt davor nicht gesehen und ich danach gesehen. Und ich selbst weiß bis heute nicht, was es eigentlich ist. Ist etwas Außerirdisches? Könnte ja sein. Ich kann nur sagen, was ich gesehen habe.
在比利时不明飞行物事件中，很多目击报告来自军事基地、民用机场或是城市中心。所有这些报告只能得出一个结论：确实曾经有东西出现过，我们必须高度重视。
The difficulty, of course, of studying UFOs, if in fact they are manifestations of some advanced civilization, is that we are more or less in the same position of, let's say, laboratory mice attempting to understand the civilization of biology technicians in the laboratory. It is just beyond our imagination. And Arthur C. Clarke said that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
History is filled with accounts of new phenomena, poorly understood phenomena, that have been ridiculed, made fun of. Why? Because science hasn't had a chance to look into it, or won't look into it for various reasons. We've got to turn that situation around.
We have this propensity in our culture to ridicule UFO sightings. It's a problem, and we need to be more mature about it in this country.
You know, it's not all aircraft lights and weather balloons and hoaxes. There is a genuine phenomenon here, something that the scientific community should want to look at. It should want to engage on this. I mean, potentially, it has incredible things to teach us.
We have to keep in mind that our civilization is only about 40,000 years old, which is a blink look in the lifetime of our galaxy. So we are babes in the woods. And with 200 billion stars, that adds up to an enormous number of planets, including, we now know, Earth-sized planets. So the potentiality for life out there does seem to be very great indeed.
We have very, very sophisticated analytical techniques that are being used all over the universe now to look at planets, stars, nebulosities. But started asking around, so has anybody done a really sophisticated, technologically astute approach to photographing UFOs so that you could really get, you know, what I sometimes call the Zapruder film of UFO sightings? And the answer was no. So in that vacuum, I decided to undertake what has become kind of a hobby project for me. I've started applying very sophisticated digital motion controls and tracking technology that we use in special effects, some of which we developed during the making of Close Encounters, to try to photograph a UFO.
特朗布尔的计划，也就是人们所知的不明飞行物摄影，使用精确校准的相机和天线来记录夜空中的影像和数据。通过从不同地点观测同一区域，特朗布尔的仪器能精确记录任何飞行物的速度、轨迹和高度，并能够判断拍摄对象是否是普通飞机。
My plan is to make imagery that would be scientifically valid and that could be scrutinized, just like the Zapruder film, to where really good scientific photo-optical analysts could look at them and say, well, this is exactly what happened.
Taking a 2-second dark exposure.
And I think over the next few years, it's just unlikely that we won't encounter some evidence of intelligent life in the universe. I just think it's going to happen, and it's probably going to happen fairly soon. And I'd like to be part of that.
It's really an exciting time to be involved with UFO research. And there seems to be greater chances that we're going to capture even more solid data. But we also have to be extremely careful to hold it to the absolute highest standards.
There was something there, very small black object clockwise, and the length is unbelievable. We do not have anybody up there right now.
I was driving north on 101 highway.
从这些至今最为可信的不明飞行物事件中，我们看到了无法驳斥的第一手资料。北约基地的指挥官、美国联邦航空局负责人、飞行员、警官、前任州长，这些人都以自己的名誉担保，提供了他们自己都难以相信的证词。所有从雷达数据、照片以及未曾公布的录音中所收集到的证据，使这些不明飞行物目击事件成为了一个难以被忽视的问题。
It's the accumulation of overwhelming evidence from pilots, generals, government officials that prove, in my opinion, that we have an actual physical phenomenon that has not been explained. It's time to embrace this information and the new reports much more openly.
The command pilot of this particular flight, he was scared to death. He's not sure what it was.
It was the shape of a boomerang.
Huge triangular object.
As large as 3 or 4 aircraft carriers.
And it came right at us, made not a sound.
It definitely was under some type of intelligent control.
It's coming this way. It's definitely coming this way.
3 tubes of fluorescent light.
Dark gray oval.
Like a UFO type thing.
It looked like someone poked a hole in the clouds.
It just all of a sudden disappeared.
There's no doubt about it. This is weird.